Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's the August 16th meeting of the Board of Sewer Commissioners. To call the meeting to order. And a roll call.
Sandy Slavin, present.
Malcolm White, present.
Peter Dunlop, present.
And Jim Gibberti, present. We have minutes from the meeting of August 2nd.
I have a couple amendments to those.
Okay, Sandy?
On the first page, under approval of minutes, number 1, it says June 7th, but the motion is to approve the July 19th minutes.
Okay, that needs to be corrected.
I need that needs to be changed to July 19th.
Affirmative.
The other,
Sandy?
on the first page, under approval of minutes,
First page, number 3.
under number 3, see number 1, it says June 7, 2018, but it's talking about approving July 19th minutes. And on the last page, it has the next meeting date is August 2nd.
I just took that at 2019, I misread it.
So I believe that has to be done for today's date, the 16th. And those are just the two, those were the only corrections I would recommend for the minutes.
All right, do I have a,
Take a look at the paragraph on sump pumps. Second sentence and read it and see if that was the intent. Didn't sound right.
Mr. Chairman, may I say that one of the issues with doing the minutes is sometimes we don't speak into the mics and the words are missing, and so sometimes they're filled in and assumed. So I would suggest that we all speak clearly into the mic, so when she transcribes and she listens to the tape, it's pretty straightforward what we're saying. I know that has been an issue. I've watched the tapes, and sometimes I can't hear, and I try to figure out, and I don't take notes, and I think that Clerk Slavin takes notes, and so I think the new policy is to make sure she gets involved so that we can be clear on what's being said on these minutes.
Yes, it's my understanding that I'm going to get a set of minutes just after they are done to review them before they are passed out to the rest of the board in case I find some adjustments that are needed. But also mention that when we talk among ourselves, it overlays what's being said from the floor, and that becomes hard to understand what's being discussed.
So how do you want to word that, Peter? Did you mean Commissioner Dunlop suggested that a $100 surcharge be assessed to property owners unless they can prove otherwise?
So it's pretty much the English that you don't like?
Yeah, it just
yeah, it
sounds like you're getting assessed $100
it's cumbersome.
if they do not have one.
Well,
Right. Yeah,
That's
well,
what it sounds. That could be the microphone.
so, I mean, I think it's a pretty straightforward, it could be, instead of provided,
So instead of saying provided, so the owners, unless they can, instead of provided that the homeowner can prove, unless the homeowner can provide proof that
Well,
they don't
not
have a
provide,
sump pump,
we-
something to that effect?
To that effect.
I don't know how to provide proof unless we actually go in and look, but that's, yeah.
Can we just exempt that part and approve the minutes, and when we get finished with our discussion, we can make that comment?
Whatever you want to
Can
do.
we do something like that, Mr. Chairman?
There was-
Yeah, we can make a motion to accept the minutes with corrections and add the correction.
Well,
No, this was not a decision, it was a suggestion, so it was really part of the discussion that is covered. Also briefly discussed is enforcement for violations. Discussion continues, so to me, if you take that sentence beginning Commissioner Dunlap, remove that through the words "do not have a sump pump," it goes discussions continue, including assessments of fines. So by removing that sentence, you haven't changed the meaning of that topic.
There's no decision was made. This is not a
No, and
decision.
it's part of the
There's no
discussion that went
facts.
on.
I don't know. But nonetheless,
I'm sorry, Sandy, would you review that, what you just said,
Just delete it as inaccurate, that's all.
as the entire sentence
Yes, starting with Commissioner Dunlap
over to
That makes it
over to
easy.
through
discussion?
sump pump.
Okay.
so we're deleting it from Commissioner Dunlap on down?
Just for that one sentence,
That
through
makes
the
it-
word sump pump. So I make a motion, we accept the 8/2/18 minutes with the 3 amendments made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 400.
So then you must have the minutes in here someplace for me to sign? Are the minutes
I do
here?
have- Yeah. A couple of things here. Citizens' participation, we have no one here. We have an abatement. 10 Liberty Avenue.
I make a motion that we grant this abatement.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
4-0. We've got a couple of grant contracts. And one is for the installation of the bypass connection at the Cohasset Narrows and Hinesfield Pump Station.
Would either of these can be considered capital improvements?
Grant, do they?
look at the definition. As far as pure capital improvements, I think these grants are in reaction to resiliency issues. So they are capital improvements. We're putting bypass in so we can continue to operate in the event of a storm. It's a resiliency incentive. It goes along with the governor's incentive for resiliency. The investigation of and trying to figure out what we're going to do with the overflow, well, that was a direct result of the March 2nd, 3rd storm. So I don't know what to call them. I think they're improvements. I don't know if they're capital improvements. So I'm not one to make the determination on
Mr.
that.
Chair, neither of them are on the 5-year capital plan,
Right.
which is why I'm questioning whether or not they are capital. But they are, if I understand these grants, your team is going to do all the work, right?
The
It just says
grants-
the town of Wareham is going to do this.
The grants, there's contracts that are coming down the pike. There, GHD engineering firm is going to do the work of these grants. They're going to put out the RFP to hire the company to install the bypasses, and their engineering firm is going to do the evaluation of our process, of our infrastructure, our capability of holding water in the system. So they're going to actually physically do the
But
work.
these contracts are not for work. They're not, they will not result in work being done, because you still need an RFP.
These contracts, these contracts that we're getting are with the state to receive the funds. The
Okay.
specific contracts in front of you this evening are the contracts that the state sent to us after awarding the grants to make an agreement with the state to authorize the payment of this grant. That's what we're doing tonight, so I don't know.
It's my understanding, we, the town of Wareham, has to pay the full 204,000 for the bypasses before we can get once the work is done.
No, if you
We
look,
don't get the grant until the work is done, right?
no, the grant, we have the grant. We've been awarded the grant. This is the contract for the grant. There's a structure, if you look at the structure of payments.
I saw
and
that, but it
tasks,
says,
They reimburse us as we go along.
reimburse us, which means we have to pay before we can be reimbursed.
We put in for a requisition, let's say that we complete task one, we put in for the task, they cut us the check, we cut a check out to the engineering firm. That's the process.
So of this total 204, it actually costs us 46,
Correct. They were getting,
and the rest of it is gonna come in the form of a grant.
correct.
But I think what Sandy's asking is, do we have to put up the 204 before
No.
we get the grant money?
No. They give us the
Advance, it
grant.
says advance payments shall not be made, which means they won't pay us until we,
They won't pay us until the work's completed, so what happens is the engineer, this task is completed. We take that task, we send it to the state, they reimburse that task, we take that task specific, and we pay it. So let's say the first task is $10,000.
No, wait, I'm going to ask the question. So the contractor, whoever gets this work, will not be paid until the state pays the town of Wareham?
That is correct.
Wow, I don't want that. Sorry, comment.
The contractor know that?
Absolutely, they're the ones that are involved, absolutely. They helped set up the schedule. We met with the state last week, and the contractor
Wow.
helped make up the schedule. So we submit as we
Is that
go
typical
along.
on a contract like that?
Yeah,
That's how fast they turn it around.
and the schedule was worked out between the contractor, the engineering firm, and the state. That's the results of their meeting. So requisitions go out, you see the schedule for requisitions. When the task is completed, they get paid.
So this is just confirming to the state that we're willing to accept the grant and do the work?
That is correct. This is a contract between the town. Now, once this is approved here, I still have to take it to the town administrator to be signed and sent off to the state. In the past, I just took them right to him and he signed off on it, we're done with it. But this is another, to bring it to you folks, so this is going to go to him to be signed off on as a procurement officer.
The,
45 days. Not bad. 45 days. It's not 60 or 90.
Right.
They're probably used to 60 and 90, dealing with
With
this
the
stuff.
town? Absolutely,
But they have to have their paperwork in order, so they're all aware of this when they sign up, right? Whoever's doing the work.
absolutely.
They've probably done it before.
They've done it many times before. This grant program through CZM has been around for years, and most engineering firms in this area have utilized these grants to help communities get the work done with a 75% pay, 25% from the community. So if you're going to do anything, especially resiliency, we're all trying to identify and become more resilient because we know storms are becoming more severe. And so how do we protect our infrastructure, our communities? So these grants have been ongoing, and they'll continue to be ongoing. And the state's set up another whole, I think it's the MVP program, the same concept. So this is not going to stop, and the money's needed by communities.
When's this due to start?
The kickoff date is 9/28/18.
Is there any possibility that it won't be completed by June of 19?
No, there's no possibility. It will be completed by June of 19. It's a fiscal year. We have no choice. So we've scheduled a time that we're way ahead of schedule with plenty of buffer because there's always unknowns, but so there's plenty of buffer to meet the commitment because the fiscal year closes and then there's just no way.
Fiscal year ended.
Okay.
Okay,
You okay with it?
I make a motion, we approve the grant, the contract policy for the bypass connections of Cohasset Narrows and Hines.
do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
4-0-0. Okay, that one's under control. Now we have one for the resiliency assessment. of overflow lagoons. And this one is...
So this is not a deliverable other than a document making a proposal to how do we prevent the overflow?
That's correct. It's just going to be the infrastructure, the facility, the physical basin. The question is, last year we spilled quite a bit of water on the ground. How do we stop that?
Okay, this is no shovel in the ground. This is a study only.
That's right.
Is there any way we can add to your summary the issue of the unauthorized discharge into the sewer system causing the problem? Because I don't know whether or not sea level rise. I was just looking at your summary and I'm saying,
Well, there's two issues here. So when you have sea rise, you have more sump pumps going.
Right.
So
Yeah,
the
but-
grant is for sea rise. So
is that what the grant physically said, is to handle the sea rise
absolutely, it's to handle the
and the storms?
climate change, and which has created greater storms, greater sea rises, which impacts us all. So that's what the grant program is all about.
The issue of the unauthorized discharge is something we, the town of Wareham, has to take care
Have
of.
to deal with.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I make a motion, we approve the contract policy for the study, for the resiliency assessment of the overflow lagoons.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And done deal. Okay, that's that. Okay, let's go along. Superintendent's reports.
Mr. Chairman, I have a lot, but I have nothing, so there's a lot. But anyways, first of all, at the last meeting, we increased the rates to be effective immediately, which is the next billing cycle. My question to you is, should we send out a letter to the ratepayers preparing for that increase?
I would say yes, myself.
Yeah, too bad we didn't make the last bill that came out yesterday.
Yeah,
And that was already in the process, yeah, we missed it.
Yeah.
So I will draft a letter, get it out to the residents previous to the
Yep.
billing, that we are going to raise the rates,
Could
and
I-
explain the reasons for
Could I
it.
recommend that we send the letter to our town officials first? Because I think our town accountant found out about it from a newspaper, and he's the one that's in charge of putting the bills out.
Town accountant called us, that's incorrect in this sense. John Foster called us when this happened, when we were doing the bills. His question was it going to affect the last bills because they were in, and we said no.
No,
It will affect
yes,
the-
but he only heard about it by reading it in the paper. We really do owe it to the town officials, whether you call it the town administrator, the town accountant. There should be something formally from us telling the town that we've made this decision. They should not have to read it in a newspaper.
To your point, I agree.
We're all part of the same team.
Well, I agree across the board, and it's a reciprocatory because we don't find out about buildings changing, buildings going up until after the fact
left us
also.
out behind.
So we need to address the bigger picture that there's a lack of communication both ways. I was in a trailer park the other day, they were adding 5 trailers. I had no concept. That's a
Well-
billing issue. So yes, I agree with you.
As a
We should be
courtesy,
more-
then why don't we just
But you-
notify our liaison and let him handle it?
We were sending, every time we had a meeting, we were sending the information to our liaison. I guess I was told that they were told not to do that. The liaison.
Wait, say, who said that? Not to tell Patrick what we were doing?
Yes, I was told that they were ordered to stop it. We used to send him our agendas and the disposition of our agendas, so he could take it to the Board of Selectmen and
Did he
present. so they would be
personally ask,
educated.
did he personally ask you to stop it, or did it come from something
He
else?
asked me to continue it.
Then that's what you do with your liaison.
He needs to be in the loop. And then everybody has the knowledge. At the selectmen's meeting, the town administrator is there. He says, this is what's happening in the sewer. I've got this report, and now it becomes public knowledge. So if you want me to continue that, I will continue that process.
I would continue it personally. I think that's,
But this is strictly notification, doesn't change the facts that we're doing it.
No,
No, and it's,
Okay.
again, to your point, it's just a courtesy of telling them, to your point, Peter, it's a courtesy of them knowing what we're doing. It's a courtesy. Like
Well,
we expect the courtesy, we want them,
The
so,
letter that you do send out, be sure you state that the infrastructure has been let go, and this is a must so that we can get it up to par.
Absolutely, I agree with you.
Okay.
We'll include the reason so they can look at it and say, okay, this isn't just arbitrarily, because some people think we raise rates just to have extra money. Even raising the rates, we're still going to be short as to what we really have to accomplish. So we're doing it because we're forced to, because A, costs are going up exponentially over the years to run the facility, and then
Well-
our infrastructure is hammered and we need to repair that. So
Well, that might be
absolutely.
another thing to mention, when the rates went up the last time.
2011, and we've been struggling ever since. We've been behind the
Kim?
8 ball, going backwards ever since.
Mr. Chair, do you want to see the letter before it's sent?
I
Sure.
prefer.
That would be
I'll be
good.
down, I'll be down there tomorrow, so.
We'll have to draft it, and everybody's off tomorrow, it's just me, and I'm not typing it, because you won't read it if I type
I'll
it. So just,
You don't speak Portuguese?
just telling you, because,
Well,
but really, I'll write it, handwrite it,
Do
and
it.
you really have a problem.
Well, actually, why don't you do it for Monday?
So what I'll do is, I'll put it on the schedule for Monday, and then we'll
Yeah,
just,
'cause she won't-
we'll type it, and then I'll
I'll be
have it
there
sent to the
tomorrow.
board. We'll email it immediately to the board, board can review and have plenty of time to comment, and we can go back and forth.
As
till
long
it's
as we
done.
comment directly back to you and not among ourselves.
Right.
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay, next.
At the last meeting, we had approved the warrant contract with the stipulation of itemization.
Yep.
So Danny said he'd itemize however we wanted it. So I don't know if that means that we can proceed with the contract or not, because of last meeting, as I read the minutes, we approved the contract. We wanted a clarification on itemization. He will itemize, specifically to the amount of material, because that first manhole is on the brink of being unsafe, so it's going to take more material. So he'll itemize the material, the cost, so we'll have specifics on each manhole.
Each manhole.
Absolutely, and then we can act accordingly.
Just for clarification, when we do, that's because we have got a sliding scale, if you will, on who's gonna be charged for what. One manhole is for Bourne, another is partially Bourne, partially us, another is,
And that's why we wanted individual costs per manhole.
exactly. Yeah, so that we know which ones get banged where.
So we'll do that. So I'll move that forward, and we can get that going as soon as we can.
I thought that was started. I thought that was started.
No,
No, we just passed that yesterday, last
no,
week.
I was told not to start until I have a contract in hand, and he won't start without a contract in hand, and I had to have clarification, because that contract, I don't even know if it's been signed by the board. I have to look at that, because we had the paperwork last week, but I believe the board didn't sign it, so it has to be signed so I can move it forward in the
I think it-
process to get done. Did we sign it? I don't
thought
have
we
it.
signed it last week, but I can't answer that to you right now.
Yeah, I'll find out specific, because if it hasn't, I gotta circulate it,
I thought it would have been,
because I gotta get it over to the town for the finish of the process
I
before I
thought it
can get
had
them
been taken
going.
care of.
And that process can take up to 3 months for them to complete the second part of it. So we'll get that going, so I appreciate that. Our cleaning continues. I think I told you we did 12th, you're aware of that. A couple little ones in Swiss Beach, I think you're aware with that, one Kinko. This past week and a half, we were on, along Onset, Point, you know what Point Independent Yacht Club is?
Yep.
We have a pipe that runs from the Point Independent Yacht Club. There's a manhole at the base, the entrance to where you get your boats, all the way to Eagle Street, along the beach, under the water, with manholes along. Takes right on Eagle Street, goes down to South Water, and then to the pump station. That entire line was full of sand and rocks. And the manhole that's it's in the roadway of Point Independence has sunk 8 inches. So that means that when the water comes in and it leaves, it's got to go up. So it's constantly flooded. The manhole's flooded and the line's flooded before it can push up and start the gravity. And it carries all that debris. So eventually, we got the line clean, and we're good about that. But now we've got an issue we weren't aware of, that the manhole's actually sunk. And that's going to be a major repair, because it's in the water, and it's all sand, and there's bulkheads there, and it's a really tight location, and so we've got to really make a plan to repair that manhole, and so we'll deal with it. And the reason why it's critical is because Bay Point's getting ready to move forward. And so what we did is we asked them to move the force main from the head of the Point Independence line to down the road in Onset Avenue into the pump station. Well, in the interim of that request, there's been lawsuits and a whole lot of things, and they're not prepared to make that move until the second phase. So that means we're going to get 28, 30 homes, whatever the number is, previous to the second phase. I talked to Mr. Fay and said, can you move that to the first phase?
Are they just gonna not put any bathrooms in until the second phase?
I could ask. But, and the thing is that the houses are selling. They're going to sell out quick. They've already got a lot of, sales and without even building, so it's going to be a
What
popular-
homes? What homes?
And Bay Point?
Oh, the Bay Point project. How about the two new homes on top of the hill up just outside of Point
I
Independence?
don't know anything about them. So, like you say, communication, when we find out, well after the fact.
So Bay Point will be a big impact on us.
It's going to impact. So, with that manhole sunk, what I've asked them to do is to see if they could move it to the first phase. And he said he'd be willing to do that, but he's going to check with the state, because I believe Onset Ave is state-owned. I don't think they're I don't know. So all that, because I know, I used to work for the state, and I used to sand it. So I know at one time it was state-owned. It may not be. I'm not sure, but I said you need to do your diligence, because if it is state-owned, that's a process in itself. I know when I did repair on the bridge, that bridge was owned by the state, and so much highway both sides of it, they regulated, so I'm not so sure, so they have to do their due diligence and get that done as soon as they can. So that, they're working towards that.
Has that Point Independence line been cambered,
What's Point Independence
the
line?
one you were just talking about? Whether-
Yes, we just cleaned it and cambered it,
Okay.
on the beach,
What did we
not the Point
find,
Independent, we did.
what did you find for sump pumps?
I haven't seen any because the houses are all higher and everything flows downhill, because along the Bay Point where the Point Independence Yacht Club, the gravity 12-inch line and everything comes down to it. It's a drastic slope, so I haven't seen any sump pumps because technically there's no connections in that line. The connections are up top, so I'd have to camera all the other lines up top to look for that type of thing. But the line we're working on, cleaning and repairing, there's no connections. That's just a carry line to the pump station along the beach and through the manholes.
Now, is that a line that's in good shape or one that needs
It's
to
an
be
asbestos
lined, or-
line that we need to line. It's an asbestos pipe that's not in great shape. We need to line it. And what I have to do now is I have to bring in a Vactor, and I've got to pull all the water out of it while I put the camera in, because it's submerged. You can't see the joints. So I need to pull the water out and keep the water pulled, put the camera behind the line and move them together so I can actually see what's under all that water. But everything beyond that, we cleaned, got all the sand out, all the rocks out, and it was 3/4 full.
Of sand,
I'm sorry?
of sand.
Sand and rocks.
So there's an I&I problem.
There's a problem. I have a video, I'll show it to you. You're not going to see much, and all you're going to hear is rocks. You're going to hear, as the Vactor's running, you're going to hear all the rocks coming up that line. Tons of rock, tons of sand.
How large a line?
12-inch. 12-inch asbestos. It's a pretty good-sized line. And so that's cleaned, and now we got to make some decisions on that line. And the manhole that's sunk.
Exclusive of the manhole, where does that line rank in terms of the other pipes that we have that we are aware of that need help?
Well, that's a tough question. Well, so I'll put it to you this way. If I take Bay Point out of it, that's a minimum impact. But remember, because it's so submerged, it doesn't allow flow. So all the grease balls, the sand, everything drops out because there's no flow. The lines are designed to scour. There's a foot per second minimum to scour the lines and move the sand and grit down the road. This is dead still and actually goes backwards. So the issue is that we'll always have dropping out, since the sand, the rocks, the grease is all going to drop. So it's going to become a maintenance nightmare. So we just have to decide on what we're going to fix, what we're going to continue to maintain. And so instead of Vactoring it once every 20 years, as we have been, it'd probably be every 6 months to maintain and keep up with all the sand and grit and dirt and rocks. So it just becomes a maintenance
That
issue.
only moves as you pump?
No, it's all gravity. Everything comes downhill, feeds into a gravity. And then we pump from Green Street way up, but that all gravity's through it. It's a gravity line. that goes to the next pump station, so it's all gravity. So because it's gravity, the slope on that pipe has to be at least probably 4% for a 12, and so we got movement. And that slope is negative, so that it's got to go uphill, so you don't have any flow, so it just fills up, and it spills over slowly. And then it's almost level, so you're not getting any flow. So everything just drops out, so that pipe is always going to be impacted. It's always going to be surcharged, and it's always going to carry a lot of grit and rocks and stone.
How bad a back slope does it have?
It's bad. It goes downhill. It's
Well-
8 inches, so 8 inches.
What I'm saying is it's coming downhill and it feeds into this pipe. You're saying the pipe is tilted this way instead of this way.
So 8 inches, so now,
How much of a tilt, or what would be necessary to bring it up?
pick up the whole manhole, 8 inches. Pick up the whole manhole.
Okay, and that would solve the problem?
Then it would. It's a costly solution, but yeah, to pick up the...
Well,
yeah,
but the
have to
point,
pick up whole
the point
manhole.
I'm getting at,
And-
the Bay Point's not going away,
By Independence?
huh?
Yeah, Boy Point's...
Bay Point's not going away. The volume of product is gonna increase. That pipe is gonna be there, you're not gonna be changing it and rerouting the entire system.
We are,
So-
that's the thing, because when we first dealt with Bay Point, previous to all the lawsuits, they agreed to move their force main to the next manhole down so it gets out of that area entirely. After the court orders, which we weren't part of, they changed it to the second phase. I'm saying change it back to the first phase. So I want them as soon as possible to make that change so their discharge goes down the hill on Onset Avenue to our pump station, not down Point Independence, that line. I want to eliminate their flow. Now, if I eliminate their flow, then it's still going to be wrong, but it'll be less of an impact because I'm going to take out the existing 20,000, 27,000 gallons per day and the new 28,000 gallons per day. I want to get rid of that by moving it, and that's the goal. And that was the goal from day one because we always knew that that was impacted, and that was the agreement we made with them originally. But we were not privy and part of the lawsuit. And all the deals that went on were not with our knowledge. And so we have to live by the court order. And so I'm asking them as a, us to them, could you please move it now? And Mr. Fay said, absolutely. And I'm going to start that process immediately. So cooperating with us is powerful. And so I want to get out ASAP to minimize and eliminate the impact by Bay Point, and they're willing. And so that's why we did all the cleaning in anticipation. And when we really saw this, the sinking of the manhole became critical, I called his engineer up, and they come and they met with me, and we talked it out, and I showed it to him, and he says, yeah, we'll definitely help you out. So it's a good thing. It's a good thing. They're very cooperative.
But the manhole's not going away, we still have to
No,
replace it.
eventually it will. But again, this issue's,
Just
where's
the
it going to
impact is
be?
lessened.
And I'm going to try to keep it clean like everything else, you know what I mean? So where is it? I don't know. I can price it out. It's probably about 30, 40, because dewatering's going to be awfully expensive. And then I've got to ring everything because I got a seawall to protect. It's not going to be a cheap endeavor. It's going to be
And when you raise
considerable.
that manhole, you're probably going to break that pipe.
Absolutely. Then I got to dig into the beach and replace the pipe. Conservation is not going to be too pleased with that.
Now,
That's
is
gonna
Point
be a nightmare
Independence,
itself.
is that pretty much year-round, or is that summer?
It's year-round, but high in the summer, because it takes
So
everything
it's-
down from up in Nanamit area. So there's a lot of full-time in Nanamit area, and then Green Street is some summer, and then everything up behind it, Point Independence.
Well,
there's a
when
couple.
Bay Point does what they're going to do and works into the other manhole, can we take everything else that's up on the hill and put it there too?
I don't believe so, but I can look at it, because everything that's from Onset Avenue, between Onset Avenue and the beach, it all flows downhill. To reverse that flow, I'd have to pump it, so
No,
it's all
no,
coming
no.
down, so it'd be difficult to reverse that flow.
Well, no, not reverse the flow, but everything above is on Onset Avenue. Everything above Onset Avenue would go into the second manhole.
Everything above, so Onset Avenue's here,
Everything on the Bay Point side.
most of that is already going, other than Bay Point discharges directly to that manhole, and they're the only one that goes to the upper manhole.
All right.
So when power goes out, they have no sewer. They're responsible to their residents. And so we'll suggest a generator. I can't mandate a generator because it's not, I can ask the DEP because of their flow. And I may have to say, listen, you will put a generator, I'll find that out, but that'll all be, because it's all per our bylaws. And so a generator would, yeah, put a generator. We will probably say put a
So
generator, but
we
we
are
got
going,
that.
we should say you must put in grinders. You must allow for full electrical backup should power be lost. Don't say the word generator, but then you have to provide electrical support in case of power failure, and let them come to the conclusion it's a generator. But we don't have a holding tank anymore.
That's right, that's
And
gone.
you are going to require them to have a maintenance agreement,
Yes, ma'am.
which includes how often they clean out the racks.
So that's on them. The maintenance agreement is 4 times a year, so they'll have somebody come in 4 times a year to inspect it. The RAG is going to be their schedule because it's their responsibility to educate their folks. If they don't educate them, they may be cleaning those
So
pumps
we're going
daily.
to ask for 3 things. In a nutshell, we need 3 things out of this contract for Woodland Cove. So there won't be a question at a later meeting that, oh, well, we didn't know about the
Well,
grinders.
there will be a question, but that's beside the point. So yeah, that's fine, that's fine.
What about the study they paid for $9,000? Was that ever completed?
That's it, absolutely, and that study
And
was
what
to
did
make
it
sure.
say?
It says they're fine, that everything from their business all the way to our facility is in good shape, that it'll handle all their flow.
Okay.
That's what they paid for, the infrastructure that they're
Is-
dumping into.
Was that report made available to anybody?
It was made available to the planning at the meeting, but
Planning but not zoning?
well, I thought, it was made to Ken, who I
Oh,
thought.
Buckland, who does over both,
So I thought he
yes.
was doing,
Okay.
so I figured get to him, then it'd be dispersed. So that's who it went to, Ken Buckland. Because he had to cut the check. He had the money.
So by putting in the 4 pumps, you don't feel they need a retention tank?
No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all.
And you don't feel that we can insist on a backup generator because if the system fails, it's their problem?
It is their problem. We can say, yes, you put a backup generator. They can fight back. But yeah, we can say anything we want to say. It's within our.
But we
purview.
can't, we don't have anything to back
I
it up.
think the DEP, I can ask the DEP because it's greater than 10,000 gallons per day. So the DEP can say, yes, you will put one, and I will clarify that with the DEP just to see, but even then, they can challenge it, but
Now, if they had these pumps and they didn't have a generator, where would the backup physically occur?
in their apartment buildings.
In the building?
Yeah, because it's not gonna come to us, because if the
It
pumps stop
wouldn't, it
working.
wouldn't flow out into the parking lot?
No, because the tanks are sealed. So it's gonna go backwards, and it's gonna keep rising backwards. Every time somebody flushes, it's just gonna keep building up in the building. It's got no place to go. There's no
Building
place
big
to go.
enough to hold it all?
It's got up to them. They can put big pipes in the building. I'm not so sure that's
They're
gonna
only
be
gonna
that.
have to worry about the first floor. Once it gets up 8 feet,
That's true.
So that's why, and it sounds kind of crazy, but that's their issue. And so I think health and all that, I'm hoping.
I understand.
Hoping they're wiser than that,
Well,
but
it's
yes.
just that there was something else that was mentioned recently, that the planning board suggested that they do something about their parking lot because they've made no plans for runoff, and their runoff will go right into Onset's water. But we haven't heard anything that they're doing anything to mitigate that. I mean, I realize that's not
I
our
thought
problem.
Yeah, I thought they were taking it all to the state, on the state highway, and give it to their collection system. That was my impression. They just pitch it all to the state. But if they're taking it, pitching it to I have no idea, but,
Can't really do that.
well, if they pitch the flow and it just runs down the road into the state, I mean, it's there. It happens all the time. We do it.
Well, if they pitch it the other way, they pitch it right into Onset's wells.
What they're supposed to do is pitch it to a collection system and send it to some type of system that's treating it, that's putting it through filtration then into the groundwater. That's what they're supposed to do.
That's what we do with all of it.
And I'm surprised, because it's an MS4 issue, and if they're not doing that, then shame on us. That's an MS4 issue. That's a federal issue, handling stormwater. We're going to be under a mandate. We need to do that for our own community, let alone businesses. So our town should be enforcing MS4 policies and procedures, because it's the law, and we're going to be under that law. So if we're saying do what they got to do nilly-willy, that's a problem. That's a
Just
problem.
about every project now, we put it underground.
MS4 mandates it. That's a federal mandate.
No more retention ponds, none of that.
So you never, and the planning board's aware of that, you never let it just go willy-nilly, you collect it. You collect it and you treat it.
And then what?
Then it goes back into the water table. You filter it back into the water table, because you need the water. We have a water shortage, so it collects, it goes through filters into the water table, and it's very good water.
The next item on our list is sump pumps. I hope that's not what they're thinking about.
Well, they don't have a need for some pump, because I don't think they have a water table issue, but nonetheless.
Well, if they have a driveway issue and they gotta collect the water,
Well, but then if they did, that would be all in
let's
it.
face it, look what happened up in Lynn just last week, 8 inches of water in 2 hours.
It's insane. And we look for cross-connection. We found some in Swiss Beach where the drainage are connect to the sewer, and we know there's many more. We just have to find them. It's gonna be a lot of cammering, but that's been done. That was actually policy. Just when you get a flooded road, tie it into sewer. It goes away.
Anything else on Woodland?
Okay. I guess that kind of clarifies the situation we had on Woodland Cove.
Well,
Any other questions?
it clarifies as far as we're concerned, but now, should somebody be at the ZBA meeting
Wednesday,
on the, was it the 22nd?
22nd, yes.
Here's what perturbs me, to be very blunt. I had a meeting with Ken, Derek, Mr. Rowley, about this letter, and I was emphatic that we wanted grinder pumps. How could they not know? That's what floors me.
Well, that's what Mr. Rowley put in his report, that grinder pumps and holding tanks were required. This was his report from when?
Right, it's, so for somebody to
August 7th?
suggest that it wasn't real, I don't get it. I don't get it, because the powers to be were at that meeting.
That's why people came, that's why Alan came back and questioned.
Well, goes uphill.
Well, according to the emails
Point
I read,
is, should somebody be there?
right?
Yeah, who will be there Wednesday?
What date?
Wednesday, the 22nd, at the zoning
Next
board,
Wednesday?
at the zoning board.
I don't, want me to be there?
Somebody
I
need,
think somebody should
Well,
be.
do you want me to be there?
someone needs to be there to say, Guy didn't say that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think you need to be there, Guy, in order to clarify anything that comes up that's
Sure.
outside of the discussions we're having right now and understand.
May
If they throw
22nd.
something else in there that we're unaware of, it's gonna be tough for one of us to,
Okay, it's
Launch
here,
the
correct?
argument
I'll be,
necessary.
I'll be.
Is it 6:30? I
yes.
think it's
I think so,
6:30.
right here, isn't it?
Yes,
I'll be here.
yes.
Okay. Okay. I'll be at the
And
meeting.
I think it would be necessary, particularly after what's happened so far. I mean, if they've got miscommunication on something that was cut and dried and upfront and everybody knew, and all of a sudden it gets a 180, I think we need to get back on, make sure that we're all on the same page there somehow.
Are you here that day?
Yeah, I already put it down on my calendar.
I'll do that.
Go.
Yeah,
Remind me, would you
I will,
please?
I've got it in my calendar. Definitely will.
Okay.
Okay, now the elephant in the room. Sump pumps. We've just kind of become aware of a problem that existed on the Swift Beach project as a result of the sump pumps. Where in the process of lining, sump pumps came on and pushed the liner in unto itself, and it's got coated and firmed up and stuck. So instead of having a round, clear pipe that was lined, we wound up with a pipe that had something like this in it.
There's a V in the bottom.
It had to
It's
be
like
cut
this.
out.
It was like this.
Right.
And it was a
Whatever.
major problem to cut it out. It was
And it-
thousands and thousands of
And
dollars.
it took hours. And
We don't.
Thousands of dollars.
somewhere in the neighborhood of
Well, what we had
$107,000.
thought was an
It was a
$18,000
staggering number, right?
overrun,
It was a staggering number.
about 10 times that.
Okay. The contractor at this point is not looking at charging us for that. Now, when you look at the situation, what happened, best we can determine at the moment is it's our fault that that happened, not anything that the contractor did. And I say it's our fault because there is a bylaw in this town, sump pumps, and that they are illegal. There is a penalty, fining on the sump pumps that hasn't been enforced. There's been no enforcement on this. Therefore, we wound up with this particular situation. With the amount of pipelining that it looks like we'll be doing over the next odd number of years, something's got to be done about these sump pumps, otherwise this situation will reoccur. If it reoccurs, who's going to pay that bill? There is case law where the homeowner can be charged for it, if you can determine the,
Do we know the address of the one that caused this problem
Yes.
with the liner? So we have the address,
yes,
and it's in Swiss Beach.
yes.
Well,
Keep us quiet until Danny files the suit.
Well, when I, well, at this point, I'm just trying to give you background on where it's.
Okay.
But that's a situation
How,
that is.
how can we prove somebody has a sump pump? Is there a method that we
Into the
can,
basement, or we set a camera.
so we
photo.
have to have it, we have to gain entrance to the premises? Okay. Now, unless we're invited in, we have to have a warrant.
That's correct.
So, back to my original question, how do we prove somebody has a sump pump?
We've
Because we
noticed-
can't ask for a warrant without some sort of
So that was the
evidence.
goal, was to say, okay, fine, we're gonna fine everybody. We're gonna put a letter out to the residents, say, listen, effective whatever date, we're gonna bill everybody $1,000. Now, you have 6 months to come to us and allow us to look at your basement to prove there's no sump pump, and then you won't get fined. I could sit and it's a hit and miss. I have to pick a rainy day, sit there with my camera and watch, and then literally see the water come out, identify it, go knock on the door, say, sir, your sump pump is running. You can still say, I don't have one, go pound tar. So we need to get in, and so how do we get in? We can send a letter asking them. Now, there are communities that have done this. They've hired consultants, they've got ways, they send letters, they say, can we come in, and you get a compliance. And then maybe you get 70% compliance. You'll always have the knuckleheads that say, no way. I mean, that's life with all things. But you're trying to get a majority compliance, and that's the beginning. And so it may be simple to say, hey, folks, can we come in and check the sump pumps? You know, and then we go from there and just keep moving along. And then when we don't get compliance, then we can start coming after the knuckleheads hard. But most people will comply.
I think that's the way that we should approach this. Right now, maybe take it one section of town at a time.
do we find the sump pumps in specific areas, in flood zones?
Yes, you do.
Do they exist outside of flood zones?
Yes, they do.
But the majority are in the low area.
That's correct.
So we could very well, could we identify the homes that are in flood zones?
Well, that's what I'm saying, we take one section of town at a time, starting with your,
But by using the FEMA flood maps,
yeah, which are.
you can't just say Swiss Beach and not say based on a
I realize that.
document, yeah.
What I'm saying is you take one area at a time, do all of your beach areas first in order.
Do we have
In
sump
order.
pumps that are
There's
in?
another thing, too. If we smoke, when you usually tie a sump pump in illegally, it has no vent. Doesn't vent out. So when I smoke that house, it's going to fill that basement with smoke. Because you take the manhole, you cap it, and you smoke it. It's perfectly, it's matter of fact, that's how you find I&I, and it's an acceptable, it's done all over the country.
And it's cheap.
It's very cheap. And then you seal it with it's got a rubber tube, and you just pump smoke. You set it off, it smokes, you pump it, it goes down the lines. And the design is it's going to come up your pipe and out your vent. So it's designed to do it because your system is supposed to be properly vented, right? That's the law.
So if it comes out of the vent, you're fine.
So where will if you have a sump pump, where will the smoke come out?
Out of your sump pump.
What if they trap it?
Then it won't come out.
Okay, so it's not foolproof.
Nothing's foolproof, but we're trying all the different methods to get it, because if somebody's basement's full, they're gonna call, hey, what's going on, my basement, oh, really? Can we take a peek? So it may not be one technique, it may not be one tool, it may be a plethora of tools, but we need to get there. So we have to start somewhere.
The I&I report that Ty and Bond put out
Beta,
was, I thought it was Ty and Bond.
beta.
Beta.
Oh, I'm sorry. Identified that it was 92% of our I&I was sump pumps?
Inflow, yes. The biggest issue with the last storm was not the I&I, it
Well,
was inflow.
If they did that and came up with that number, then they probably could identify the areas that we really want to look at.
We already have the areas, there's 6 areas, we have that.
We do have
We
that.
have that based upon, so when after the storm and the sump pumps continue, they continue to flood, they pump longer durations, and they can see the numbers by pump run time. So yes, they identify, we have that, that's identified.
All right. What
So
are they?
we do know
I don't have
the
that.
areas we should focus on.
Absolutely, you do. And they suggested in that big report that we start smoking them and all the techniques needed to isolate and locate specific. And so if we follow that plan and invest the money,
This smoke
then-
that we use, what's the downside to it? Is it, I mean, obviously it can't be toxic.
No, it isn't. It's perfectly harmless. It's done every day.
It's not going to end us in some sort of a lawsuit.
No. And let me say this, anything can end in a lawsuit. People sue for spilling coffee themselves. The point being is that it's an acceptable practice.
That's what I
It's-
want to hear.
Yes, that's what it is, and so,
You don't know the 6 sites?
I don't, I got the report, I'll get it to you. I thought I sent the summary to everybody, but obviously I didn't get it to you, so I'll make sure you get one.
Maybe I haven't read it. So if we take a look at the 6 sites, hit one at a time,
That's what I said.
That's what Jim
Yes.
was
Area at a
alluding
time.
to.
That's what I'm saying.
have they prioritized which ones were the worst?
I think so, because they did it by percents, so I
Okay.
believe we can say the highest and work our way down.
So.
So if we start smoking and start doing these things,
How expensive?
If we do the smoking to begin with, say area number 1 that's the highest priority. We smoke there, determine what we come up with, we've got some areas, houses that we don't know. I think then if we request entrance to those that we haven't, or determine there is not a problem, and see whether or not anything exists. If we've still got ones left over that either won't cooperate or thing, we just charge them $1,000 until they can verify the fact that they do not have a sump pump. Give them 6 months then to let us in the door or remove the sump pump or whatever the hell they have to do.
I think that's reasonable.
I mean, would that seem like a reasonable direction to start? Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Let me ask one question first.
Yep.
How expensive is this smoke testing?
It's at least, I'll put a number to it. It's very, very inexpensive relative to
Okay.
everything else we're gonna do.
Now, if you did smoke testing and you identified 6 homes, 4 people let you in, the fact that smoke was in the other 2 would certainly be enough evidence to get a warrant to go into those other 2.
That's the I don't know, because warrants is, who do you get the warrant
Well,
from?
we'll
But
obviously
I
would
think-
have to check with legal.
I think we can
But at
fine
least
them.
we'd have something.
I think we can fine them.
But going back to what I was just saying here, I mean, you hold the warrant thing off, you got those 2 there, that there's something, you can't get, the next bill, $1,000, just, you want to get rid of that, we'll be happy to take it off, however, comma.
I don't
Okay.
think $1,000 is high enough.
I need to slowly go through how this smoke test works. You're going to put smoke down a manhole, seal it off, and you're going to look to see what happens to the homes.
Yeah, so
So they're going to,
every 300
Whoa.
feet, there's a manhole.
Yes.
So you plug the downstream, plug the upstream, you pump smoke into this one, it goes down to the stops, and it hits every lateral. Literally
okay.
goes up the laterals.
And
And so when it goes up the lateral, it's designed to go up the lateral, out the stack, and out into the atmosphere.
so if it comes out the stack, that they don't have a sump pump.
That's
If
right.
it doesn't come out of the stack and comes out of the windows, then they've got a sump
They've got a
pump.
sump pump.
Or some sort of illegal
or
plumbing.
something not kosher. And it may even help plumbing because it'll identify improper plumbing.
It could very well be that,
And it'll
too.
also pick up improper or illegal drains tied into the sewer. So there's a plethora of things that it can get. So by smoking, it gives us a good idea. And it makes some identifications, because when we smoke, there's a whole process. We got to advertise, we have to tell them, and knock on doors, put flyers, and we can tell them why. And somebody may say, no, I don't want, come on in. So just in that process, we may get some folks saying absolutely not. So
But if
I think we're out there.
They would still be smoked.
Everybody's gonna get smoked no matter
Yes,
what.
yes.
No matter what, we're smoking. Because there's other things we can pick up. We can even pick up a cleanout that's broken that may be taking water from the surface. So we pick it, it comes out of their lawn, we know, and even a broken pipe, it'll come out of their lawn. So we say, well, we got a big problem here. So we're gonna identify more than just the sump pump, but we'll identify other problems that we can have rectified and corrected. Yeah.
Mac, you're quiet. Anything to offer on this one?
I've already talked a lot about this.
I mean, do you think that this,
I'm just making a list of the letter that should go out. To include the bylaw with the fines. Explain the I&I issue with regard to inflow. Impact on pipelining operations and who will pay with damages, and provide an example of the cost of repair. And then a timeline by section, you noted 6. Even if you only do 1 or 2 a year.
Now, is
The
this-
rest of it is policy. I just want to get it going.
Yes, let's do
Now,
that.
is this before or after smoking?
This is prior to anything. You
Okay.
can't just drop this on them.
No, because to do smoking
That'll
legally,
be
I
a
gotta notify the
lawsuit.
fire department, the police department, the neighbors, I gotta put signs on their doors, I gotta do it publicly. There's a process.
So,
You will find some people who wrap their arms around it. Some people will remove them,
Temporarily.
possibly. But you still have the issue if we line the pipe out in front of their house, and we catch them.
Because that's the real issue. We
That
can
could
line
cost
every
them a
pipe
nice chunk.
and not get the inflow out, because they identify it as the
But-
biggest problem. So it's the inflow we
the
gotta get.
interesting part about the smoke is it will also identify other problems.
Yes, it will.
Yeah.
Yes, it will.
So you want a letter saying,
Well, this is,
what we're going to do?
absolutely.
I think it's right. I think it has to go out.
no question.
Along with the announcement, you're up in your EDU rate.
Yes, we'll send 2 letters.
Well, part of it is because
Because
of
of this.
inflow.
Well, that's,
And this, you're right, we have to, and you're absolutely right, the rates are being raised because of all these issues. It's not
Well,
because
the
we're-
reason-
The letter, however, I don't have everything there. There's more to it.
Absolutely.
but the reason we're keeping the rates low is because we haven't,
Well, this is an effort
to keep the rates low.
So, I mean, there's a lot more that can go into this. It'll take a little thought, but we ought to draft something
Yeah,
and then work on it.
this letter,
It just
Send me
affects
your draft.
everything.
And I'll fill it in, send it back, we can go back and forth on your draft until we get to the letter.
Mac,
I can do that.
Mac, can you send me a copy on that, too?
All right?
Copy me on that, too, when you send it to me.
Well, I don't have the actual content of the bylaw and all that, Jim.
I
No,
know,
but
I
if you-
realize,
your
I read a copy
draft-
of the bylaw, but
I
I'll fill in
can
on
give
it.
you an outline for the letter,
That's all I want.
That's all I'm looking for.
and then we can
We'll work
all
it.
work on it
We'll work
together.
Yeah, that's what I'm
We'll go back
looking
and
for,
forth,
so
and
that
I'll
we're all on
I'll
the
add
same,
some things.
So I've already started it.
so that we're all on the same page on your.
I'll give it a
on
little
the
more
outline.
thought. Attachment, I'm not copying it. I'll look and see if we can pull out the important stuff. Not 2 pages. They won't read it, though.
No, they won't, it's gotta be,
And these are the bylaws I thought we were going to update.
here's the funds.
because instead of $1,000, you say $300 a day, that adds up. That's a huge, and it's within the bylaws, $300.
I'll read all
I
this.
think it's up to $5,000,
Yeah, it is, 200 to 5,000,
so.
what the
I mean,
range is on the
It
findings.
it can
remember
accumulate
reading
pretty
this.
rapidly.
All of that stuff was given to us at one time or another. Maybe you weren't here that night or something. But feel free, make a copy of that and get,
No, I've seen some of this.
Okay, you're gonna forward your outline to us, Mac, and then we'll, everybody get on the same page with it. see if we can do something.
Yeah, it's gotta be short, sweet, and hurt.
Okay. Any new business? Sandy?
Where are we going to have our next meeting?
I haven't heard.
We haven't been formally evicted.
Correct. So until we're formally evicted, we're staying here.
We've been evicted.
Yeah, the school board wants this room every Thursday night.
I always wanted to go down to the plant, but
Can't.
it was a problem with the video stuff, right?
Yeah.
Well, the biggest problem with the plan is there's not enough room.
Yeah,
That's
because
the
you gotta have,
problem. We went
just in
down,
case somebody,
because I was down there and specifically looking at
Yep.
making the move down to
Okay.
there, and there's
I
just
tell
not
you
enough
that
space down
the
there.
long-term plan, and this, and I always ask, there's a 3-foot basement when they built it. I don't know why you put a 3-foot basement and not a 7-foot. I just don't, it just blows me away. You pick it up another 3 or 4 feet, you got a complete room downstairs, a complete room.
Where is this?
So you look at the admin building, so there's a concrete basement, beautiful basement, that's 3 feet.
Well, we
Where's
could-
this?
We could go meet in there on creepers.
And you'd have to have creepers, we'd have to crawl around.
Okay.
At the admin building
I'll start
itself.
practicing this.
Once again, where is this?
At the admin building. So at the
admin
plant, you go in the admin building, at the
What are the
treatment plant.
options?
There's an
Oh,
the
you
building, you
wanna
walk
know
in
the
the admin
options?
building,
For what?
it has a complete basement downstairs, but it's only made it 3
I
feet
think they
high.
meet every week.
Well, that's so they don't have to put a sump pump in.
I just raised the building 4 feet, I was like, come on. And we're high and dry, we could dig down another 10 feet, but yeah, why would you build a 3-foot foundation?
Because of the floodplain.
Yeah, we're out of the floodplain. We've always been, I was
If
like,
you were down there, you'd have to put a sump pump in.
CDM probably designed it.
that's what they did, I was like, what are you thinking?
Is that where we met one night up, it's not that big a room?
Jack it up.
On 3?
I said, I jack it up with it, now you've got a complete basement that's, it's a big room.
Is it-
We
what-
don't really
What's the
ever-
thickness of the walls on the foundation?
I believe they're 8-inch.
Oh, too bad, I was gonna say we could put a second floor on.
It's not, I think we'd have to reinforce it for a
They
second
have to be
floor.
12 inches, I think.
So, but at least we can raise the building and have a complete basement.
What about one of the trailers?
We did that. We can get in there, but is it be a tight fit?
Way too tight.
Okay, I'll go on a diet.
I'm willing. We can make it work. I have no problem.
So we're staying in this room until we're formally evicted.
Until we're kicked
When are
out,
we-
until they bring the cops here and drag
When are
us
we
out,
outta here?
kicking and screaming.
I was told we'd have to be out of here the 1st of September for the school committee.
Well, what about the room across from the TA's office over in Town Hall?
Well, that's room 27, that's an option for us.
Yeah, that's where we were gonna move to.
That was where we were supposed to move to, but I haven't seen anything saying it's a go.
I haven't either.
But I don't understand, the school committee just wants to meet every week, which is why we can't split it 1 and 3, week 2 and 4.
Where are they meeting now? Is that something they got
They
addicted?
were meeting in the middle school, in the auditorium.
Something wrong with that?
Cost, maybe?
Oh, okay, so who's paying for
I
this?
just hear that we have to have something done by the 23rd for the warrants?
I don't know.
Oh, for September. Oh, okay.
I get it.
So the meeting on the 30th is okay?
Yeah, but we do the warrants, or whatever warrant articles, yeah.
Okay.
So our next meeting, we're meeting next August 30th
Right here,
to talk about,
the warrants.
and only the warrants.
We have shared costs with the town.
So we'll
certainly
just
do.
be,
Why don't
Well,
we
the
get
warrants
preference?
is probably,
We pay.
depending
We
on what
pay our
Matt gets
share.
out to us from outlining and what we put together.
okay, so for the
individually.
agenda, we're going to say we're going to continue to use sump pumps and warrant articles is the only thing on the
Right.
meeting of the 30th. I make a motion, we adjourn?
Second.
All in
Second.
favor? 400, done.